Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 51. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and on this episode, I'm speaking with Davey Muise of Vanna. Now, I would hope that everyone out there listening has heard of Vanna, but if you haven't, that's completely okay. I'll give you a quick background. Vanna has been one of the prominent post-hardcore bands from New England for the better part of the last 2 decades. Well, it's not been that long, don't worry. It's a little over a decade at this point. But the band itself has undergone quite a few changes in that time. There's been at least 3 vocalists and numerous other member changes, but I like to think that every evolution of the band has made them better. Several years ago, Davey joined Vanna just after leaving his old band, Seeker Destroyer, and since that time, Vanna has really turned a corner. The first album he released with the group, The Few and Far Between, is one of my favorite albums of the last 5 years, and their more recent full-length, Void, may be even better. Some people do consider it better. I'm a little biased. That's just me. Anyways, this past fall, Vanna released a covers EP, Alt, which you probably saw promoted on all the major websites, Alternative Press, Substream Magazine, Absolute Punk, so on and so forth. And just last week, Davey was in the studio working on his third full-length record with Vanna. In this episode of the podcast, we talk about Davey's time in the group, as well as his activities outside of music. Davey's one of those frontmen who has realized that his position in music it allows him to really be an influence on young people. So when he's not on the road, Davey speaks with high schools and colleges and students of all ages, really, about his own experiences in life, which we get into in the show, as well as how he found a path to make a better future for himself. Davey's a very big proponent of the idea of finding your shovel. Find a way to get yourself out of whatever bad place you're in and dig yourself a better path to success. I'm a big believer in the message that Davey has to send, and we have a lot of similar ideas on why it is important for people to go out there and speak to young people, especially when they work in things like entertainment. And yeah, I don't know. I think this is a really great conversation. It wasn't what I anticipated it would be. I thought Davey and I would spend a lot of time talking about the new Vanna record, and we do talk a little bit about his work in Vanna, but we spend a lot of it talking about the importance of being a positive influence in the lives of others. And I think that that's an equally important message, if not more so. So I'm going to play a little bit of music from Vanna's last full-length Void, and I'm going to tell you about our sponsors, and then we'll get to the show. So I don't want to waste your time. I know some of these other intros have been getting long, but real quick, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter, at Inside Music Pod. That's at Inside Music POD. Also, make sure that you follow our blog, Haulix Daily. That's HAULIX daily.com. And finally, make sure you check out our sponsors. Well, we only actually have one today, and that is Haulix, the internet's leading digital promotional distribution company. Whether you're looking to get your music in front of the press or you need a little help fighting piracy, Haulix has the tools you need. For more information on Haulix and access to a free 30-day trial, visit www.haulix.com. That's www.haulix.com. I don't think anyone actually uses www anymore, but that's how it says to do it. Anyways, I thank you so much for continuing to listen to Inside Music Pod. We're going to have episodes through the end of the year, so make sure you keep checking back each and every week. And yeah, let's get to the show.
Now you see us, now you fucking don't. Moving in shadows is our only hope. See my friends, we are forgotten ones. They are the bastards and we are the sons. We are the lonely ones. I thought I told you that. I am who I am. Nothing to prove. I'm not alone here, my friends. We all got nothing to lose. We are
Pretty good. Just back at my house finally after recording for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, so are you guys done for the year at this point?
We got, I'm trying to think here. We got one more show left, right after Christmas, and then that's it for the year for us.
Well, where's the show at?
It's at Worcester Palladium. It's a loss for words farewell show. It's a
alrighty.
show, so.
Okay, well,
So there's a bunch of bands on it.
I live in Brighton, Mass, so I know what you're talking about.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's going to be a huge show. I hope to be there myself.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a pretty emotional show as well, probably. I mean, Lost Words has been a band for like 14 years or something like that, so.
I know it feels like a piece of me is kind of going away. I'm not gonna lie. They're like
Yeah,
just such an
totally.
integral part of the scene.
Right. Yeah, it's a shame because I mean they've been a band for a long time. They've done everything a band could ever really dream of doing. But it's still a bummer when your friends from a similar area. We came up with those guys, so it's always a bummer when people go away.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like they're also a band that I always felt was kind of a musician's band. Like I don't know a musician that doesn't like that band.
Yeah, exactly. Maddie is friends with everyone. They're good dudes, so they've always just made friends everywhere they've gone.
Well, how was the time in the studio? I saw photos last week, and I was hoping to touch on that a bit. I know you guys spent the summer working on writing, along with working, kind of developing the covers record. So, how was getting in the studio?
It was awesome. Yeah, we kind of had a little taste of being in the studio this summer, by getting those covers organized. But the whole time we were doing that, we were also writing, writing the new full length. So it was cool. It was, as always, you know, when you're doing anything creative, it feels like, maybe you're more sensitive to like problems of the world and your own problems. So we had a few ups and downs while we were there, for sure. Just in dealing with um, a lot of like the news that was going on in the world. The Paris shootings, San Bernardino shootings, the Ghost Inside, um, flipping their bus. There was just like I felt like everywhere there was just like there was disaster. You know what I mean? Everywhere, and a lot of it was really really close to home. Um, and I feel like for me, I was glad that I was in the studio, because I was able to like let a lot of that kind of stuff out. Studios are always a very therapeutic process, in one way or another. Because 9 times out of 10, I'm singing songs and recording songs that I've written in the past, and they're issues that I'm rehashing and issues that I'm like, you know, bringing back up again and helping me get over them, with recording, and that was no different with this one, but at the same time, there was a lot of issues in our personal lives and our friends' lives and the world that we were also kind of therapeutically dealing with while we were there. So I even changed a bunch of the subject matter and wrote some different songs and newer songs about some of the stuff that was pressing at the time. So I feel like I was really glad I was in the studio to be able to let a lot of that stuff out. Also, I was around the guys, so we could all talk about these things and support each other and get each other's opinions and thoughts out of our heads. So it was great to be in the studio, doing this record. I think um, we've been itching to get back in since we finished Void. You know what I mean? We've been itching to write new music. Some of these songs that we've had, Joel and I have had written for a year. You know what I mean? So we were really really excited to get back in there and get working again.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that. How much? I know that a lot of the material was written music-wise, but how much would you say the lyrics were done when you went in versus what you ended up just kind of scrapping and starting over?
I I I always I write every day. I had a English teacher that was kind of a mentor of mine, for writing. That was that told me to write everything write everything every day. It doesn't matter if you're writing a poem. It doesn't matter if you're just writing your thoughts down. Write every day. So I have a notepad that just says write every day that I write every day down, and that notepad is yeah. Oh, excuse me. That notepad is like you know a million pages long at this point. So I had to find a central focus of the record that I kind of wanted to like have the idea of talking about. And a lot of the songs were already written. I just didn't know that they were songs yet. And then a lot of the stuff I wrote, day of. I started writing a lot more and a lot more, and I would go in and I'd go to sit down to track, and I'd give the producer would have all the lyrics. I'd send them everything, and I'd be like, "Oh, I scrapped that whole song. All we kept is one line. Here's the new song." You know, I'm also constantly just always like being like, "Oh, this sucks. I need to push it more. Oh, this sucks. I need to push it more." So it's like half stuff was like, I have lines that were written literally a year ago. You know what I mean? And then I have stuff that I literally wrote like a day ago. So it kind of ranges. It's kind of how I'm feeling about stuff, and I'll scrap a whole song and rewrite it about something else. I think there's like 2 or 3 songs that I scrapped everything and just was like, no, I need to talk about this issue. You know what I mean? I need to get this off my chest. And you know what I mean? So yeah, it happens. It happens a lot. It happens a lot where I think I'm going to go in and do something, and it comes out to become something completely different.
Does Will have any influence on your lyrics, or is he more just on the music side of things with his producing work?
Will's great with lyrics. I discovered that when we went and did Void with him. Lyrics are really important to him. I know he writes all the lyrics in his band, and he understands the gravity of the words in a song. You know what I mean? You could have the best musical record that's everyone's ever written, but if your lyrics and your words aren't there, then it could ruin things. So me and Will sat down and on Void and hashed a lot of stuff out. He pushed me to there's another guy in my life to push me to do better. You know what I mean? To write better lyrics. It wouldn't be like, that part sucks, don't do that. He'd be like, that part sucks, you could say this better. Like, think, JD, like, think of a better way to say this. He pushes you in the right direction. So that was no different on this record. We came in and we wrote with him, finished up writing all the actual songs, and as soon as the songs were done being written in sort of pre-production tracked, he was like, all right, cool, send me lyrics. And we went through them and hashed through them. So sitting down with him about the vision of what we wanted this record to kind of come out like, and what we were seeing the record sounding like and being like, he kept that vision all the way with the lyrics. He always said, well, remember, you want to do this, so we should say this stuff. So he's a big part of all of it. It's not that he like wrote my lyrics, he just pushed me to write better, and he pushed me to think a little bit more outside of the normal way. And now this is our second record with him, so he could be like, nah, you said that last time, let's say this. So he's really, really great for that. And his assistant Randy, who we track a lot with, he's got a really good ear for like flow. He loves hip hop a lot, and he has a really good ear for just phonetics and everything. So he's brought me a long way since Void. With that too. So it's important to have a good team when you're going into create something like this.
Oh yeah, I can definitely imagine. Will was on the podcast a couple of months ago when Fit released their new record, which is incredible. Anyone listening? But yeah, he talked a little bit about that stuff and how he likes getting in there, not being too hands on. He kind of just likes to try to shape what you're bringing to the table and kind of help you refine it more than anything.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
What do you think keeps you guys coming back to Will? Do you guys just connect in that special way, or what is it about how he produces records that keeps you guys working with him?
I think it's so funny. When we were going into do Void, our band was at a very weird stage in our career and all of our personal lives, and we were very unsure about a lot of things. About the industry and about where we fit into things. And when we went to record that record, Will, he really kind of gave us focus and was like, you're unsure about things, and you feel like you always use a line, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. You feel like people don't understand. You feel like people doubt you, and you feel like this, you feel that. Like, let's write about it. Let's talk about that. Let's put that out there for those exact people to hear it. Because you guys got to remember, what you guys always say, that we are just like our fans. We are the same as the people that listen to our band. There's no difference. And those people are doubted at their jobs. Those people are brought down at home and school and everything and all this other stuff. And he really pushed us to like just be honest with like, not that we were ever dishonest before, but Will was like, nah, like who cares what people think? Like you like tell your story, you know. Um, and I don't know, man. Like it's like Will and the team over there, they got a lot out of, you know, I can speak for myself, and they got a lot out of me vocally when he's like, well, when you, like, this line, you want to see this line, you say, you know, you feel like you're losing your mind. Well, convince me. Like, I want to hear it through your vocals that you are actually losing your mind, you know? And like Void, I always tell people when they ask about it, Void was such an emotional process for me. I brought up so many issues of my past that, you know, I needed to talk about, that I wanted to share. But I literally actually lost my mind to the point where like my wife had to fly out, and I needed like some like time to like collect my thoughts, but he pulled everything out of me, you know, he pulled all of those emotions out of me. And then Void being, you know, our best selling record, our best sounding record as far as we're concerned, like, you know, as far as the musicianship and vocals and lyrically, like the band was very happy with Void. It was like, made sense to go to Will for the follow up, for that record. You know, I'm glad we did, because he knew the wavelength, you know, he knew exactly where we were coming from. You know, it worked out really great to go to him for this record too. You know, we were trying to not recapture that magic, but capture some new magic, that, you know, I feel like they were an integral part of last time. So I'm really glad that we got the chance to go back to those guys. You know, Will made a lot of time for us. So did Randy. You know, we were the only band in the studio, and you know, I feel like the whole staff was like, you know, any given room you walk down the studio, someone's editing Vanna drums, someone's editing Vanna guitar, like my voice is yelling out of 3 different rooms. So it was cool to be like, you know, to be the focus while we were in there.
You know, you kind of hit something on the head there that I did want to touch on, because I've always been a Vanna fan even before you were involved, but I did feel like the few and far between was a very, like the lyrics, I love the lyrics on that record because I feel like they paint a lot of really great pictures and there's a lot of good imagery, but when you go from that to Void, it does get incredibly more personal, like alarmingly fast.
Right.
There's almost a moment where you're like, is it the same guy writing these lyrics? Because all of a sudden,
Yep.
yeah, you feel like you've definitely kind of stepped up your approach with Void, I think, in a big way.
Yeah, it was for me, and this is it's something I touch on when I go speak at schools. I was a different person at that time. You know, I mean, it was still me, but I needed to grow up a lot, and I needed to. Yeah, you know, I had joined Vanna, and I had left my past behind me. I had put it behind me, and I had kind of buried it, you know, in a way. And, you know, stepping into the role of this lead singer of this band, you know, you want to be this cool guy, you know? And I needed to get over that. I needed to shed that. And I met a lot of people on the few and far between, like the, you know, tour cycle that we did on that. And before that too, I met a lot of kids that were they had stories just like me. They had stories, you know, their past was very spotted, just like mine, and have dealt with a lot of hard things. And the songs on Few and Far Between that were actually personal, that were actually like did hit like a personal tone, those are the songs that resonated the most with people and kids. And they just always will say, you know, thank you for sharing your story, you know, thank you for sharing that, because that's me. I felt that way, and I feel better that I've known that you went through it and you made it through. And I'm like, here I am, you know, thinking I'm this cool guy trying to, you know, act cool. And I have literally you know, the biggest closet full of, you know, stories and skeletons. And I really feel like I should share those. I really feel like I should talk more about those particular, you know, issues in my life, because that's what people relate to. And you know, for me, like I said earlier, it's therapeutic. It was me talking about them, bringing up the issues, and then finally letting them go and giving them to kids and going, you know, if you also felt this way, if you dealt with suicide, if you dealt with depression, if you dealt with, you know, abuse, if you dealt with neglect, if you dealt with all of this stuff, I feel you. I did too. And I'm here to tell you that you can make it through. You know what I mean? I'm a grown man now. I made it through all that. And now I'm singing about it, talking about it, letting you know that, you know, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. You can make it through. So it's interesting. You're one of the first people to actually make that, like, but in the band world, to make the obvious, like, comment about, like, how I was, you know, different from Few and Far Between and Devoid, which is completely 100% true. The 2 years that spanned in between those records, I really changed and became a different person completely. So, you know, Void was a necessary move for me.
Yeah, and I want to dig into it a little bit because I've been following your stuff with speaking at schools, and I find it really interesting. I'm somebody that likes to, as far as I've gotten in music in any way, I always like to go to schools and speak about what I've done, like how I get there and all that. But your story is way more intense than mine. And I only recently, so I've known about you speaking at schools for a bit, and I want to know how long you've been doing that and kind of what sparked that. So that's probably where to start. But I also kind of want to know. I want to dig into like the story that leads to you speaking at schools, but let's start there. When did you start doing the school thing, and like how did you? What told you that it was time to go and share the story with kids? Like what pushed you in that direction?
I had been talking to kids, and I met a few kids. There's like 2 or 3 that really stuck out of my mind that I actually speak about when I go to schools. But I just was like, you know, I've had this weird, crazy life. Apparently, I didn't really ever like understand it, you know. And I would share little stories of kids here and there on the road, you know, when they come up and talk to me at the merch, and it first started with me going to the merch and deciding that I wasn't going there anymore to feed my ego and to sign autographs and feel important. It was to go and talk to the kids and listen to them and listen to what they're going through, and kind of shed some light on that. And then it was like, okay, I want to talk about this on a record. I want to live. If I'm going to be this guy, I'm going to commit. I'm going to live this life. I'm going to do I'm going to dig up my past. I'm going to show it to everybody. Not to say, look at me, I'm better than everyone. It was the exact opposite of that. It's to stop acting better than everybody else and be on the same level. Get off that stage. You know what I mean? Because I was living my life on that stage. You know, I never got off of it. Didn't matter how many people were in the crowd. I didn't get off that stage. You know, and I had to turn over a complete new leaf. And Void was me literally voiding myself, like ridding myself of all of these issues and bringing them to light. And then it brought that intense connection with fans that, fans were getting into all these songs. They'd come up to me or sending me messages. And it was just getting, as soon as the record came out on Warped Tour, it was just getting to be like very insane. Like the response from it was like so overwhelming. Like, when you do anything, you talk about yourself at any time, you're running the risk of everyone going, wow, what an idiot, you're lame. Like you're judging you, and that it couldn't be further from that. Everyone embraced it. Everyone was on board. And then, just sharing myself on record opened my life up to like meeting so many people that were like, here and there, just like meeting people that, felt that record, you know what I mean? And not just kids, people within the industry, people within other industries. I met this guy named Josh Schmitz, which he runs. I don't know if you've ever probably seen me wearing it. All that Death Crew stuff that I wear when clothing I wear. It's called Ruckus Apparel. And I met Josh, and he asked me if I would be interested in like shooting their new catalog and becoming a brand ambassador for Ruckus. And Ruckus is much more than a clothing line. It's a lifestyle thing, and the whole Death Crew thing is, people living their lives unafraid of death, you know what I mean? Not concerning themselves with dying, but just concerning themselves with living. And I told Josh, I flew out to Denver, and I told Josh my whole story, like from we spent 5 days together. I told my whole story to him, from my birth to now. And I told his family, and just kind of casually telling him, and he was like, have you ever told anyone this, like what you told me, like front to back? And I was like, no. And he's like, do you understand, like your story is very like powerful and different? And I was like, no, it's always been who I am, you know what I mean? And so he introduced me to some people, and was like, you should go around and tell your story to people. Like, there's people that need to hear this, beyond just kids that listen to like hardcore. There's kids dealing with all these problems that listen to hip hop, that listen to country, listen to whatever, that are never going to hear your band. And so he planned a leadership retreat out in Colorado, out in the woods, with a bunch of people that signed up through the Ruckus website, to come out and learn how to be a leader. And there was the CEO of Wiener Schnitzel was there. There was all like these a couple pastors, like people that are like people like missionaries, people are doing like work out in like Africa, feeding like children, and like all there was like some really mega influential, like super heavy hitters there. There's also the biggest youth speaker in America, Mike Smith. He was one of the keynote speakers, and then Josh had me speak, and I'm like, me, like, come on, like, out of all these people that are here, I'm going to speak also. And I shared my story. I shared about an hour of just, my life. And Mike Smith, who, like I said, is the biggest youth speaker in America. I followed his career a bunch. He's just super inspirational. Mike Smith is the kind of guy that when you talk to him, you feel like you've never done anything in your life, but you want to do a million things right at that moment.
Okay.
He's just the kind of guy that can just kickstart your life right out of like the dumps. So, he approached me and took me under his wing and kind of was like, you need to go speak at schools. Kids need to hear this story. Like, you have something that they need to hear. And on his merit and basically his word, he got me speaking at schools. He kind of, trained me a little bit in public speaking. He's like, you're 90% there, just got to figure it all out. But at the heart of it was always the story. He's like, I don't want you to change anything, just that the story is what kids need to hear. And he started booking me at schools, and I filmed an episode of The Harbor, and then that was 2 years ago. And just since then, it's just like my whole life has been turned upside down. And it's people like Josh and people like Mike, who have believed in me and have taken, this, kind of like, former wreck of a human being and transformed me into, something else. And all the while, the whole time that this is happening, I'm learning so much about kids' lives and teenagers and high school kids in this moment, and what's real to them and what isn't. And as much as I go to a school and talk and kids learn from me, I'm learning every single day from every single kid I get to meet. And that is shining through on my writing in the band. That's shining through in my life. I'm a very different person than I used to be, and it's funny because I feel like a lot of people that might have known me, a decent amount of my life is like you're speaking at schools, like you're influencing kids, like high school kids. And I've always worked with kids my whole life. I was a preschool teacher. My mother did family daycare. I've always worked with kids. I worked after school program all of like my whole high school career. I worked an after school program for the YMCA. Like, I've always worked with kids. But I feel like, people are definitely like, I've done this with you, and we've gone and done this, and we've done these terrible things, and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, it's like I had to choose to move on with my life. I had to choose to better myself. I still get, I tell kids all the time, haters are out there, and they're just have one job, and that's to hate on you. And I would try to tell kids, if you don't have haters, then you're not doing something right. You know what I mean? As soon as you start getting haters, and as soon as people start doubting you and making fun of you and all that stuff, I'm like, well, that's when you're doing something correct and you're being successful. So it's been a wild 2 years, but it's been the best 2 years of my entire life. I've grown a lot in my personal life, and I can tell because I feel it, but also the people around me, my wife, my best friends, they tell me every day that they're proud of what I'm doing, and to keep my head up. And, like I said, it's people like Mike and Josh that just believe in me, and that I needed that extra little push. You know what I mean? I need that extra little like help. Because outside of the band, I didn't really have a career. You know what I mean? I was a preschool teacher for a long time, but I wasn't able to do that while I've been touring at all. And I focused so hard on the band, and I worked so much in the band, I didn't really have time for a career outside of it. And now that I have had time, there was nothing really there for me. So these guys kind of ushered in this whole new thing. And, and that world now is so much, half of my life. You know what I mean? It's a very large thing in my life now. And I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to meet all these kids, and to go to all these. I mean, I've gone to middle schools, high schools, colleges. I've gone to high school conventions that are like 3,000 high school kids, like all there, paid money, all there because they want to make an impact in their school and in their community and then in the country and in the world, And it's like, man, when I was like 16 years old, I was skateboarding and skipping class, like, you know what I mean? And these kids are like paying money to go to these conventions to learn how to make an impact, a positive impact in their community. And it's like, for me, I feel like, the generation before us is the generation that thinks, that kind of messed up the entire world. And then was like, oh no, we're right. We're the ones that are right. You know what I mean? Like our, not necessarily my parents, but our parents' generation, they messed up the entire world, and now they're sitting back on Social Security and Medicare and expecting us to, keep on forging on. And, I think our generation is a generation of like rebellion and like, no, we're going to change how we do things. You know what I mean? We're going to change the way we think, change the way we do things. The generation that is like the high school kids right now, that's the generation that is taking the ideas of our generation and making them real. I'm so inspired because you hear about like, the generation of like kids that are just like, oh, they're worthless, and there's this and the internet age and all this other stuff, and all the kids care about are, tweeting and Instagram and all this other stuff. And then you go and get in with these kids, and it's so much more. They're using Twitter, they're using Instagram, they're using internet as a platform to launch these ideas, to launch these projects, to do these things. I spoke at a school, and this is always an example I give. I spoke at a school that there was there's like I think it's like a 3,000 kid school in California, and the kids saw the parking lot and how the parking lot was enormous, but there was a bunch of space they weren't using, and they looked up on the internet and found this guy who made solar panels to like power, your home or whatever. Got a quote from him, raised a bunch of money, and installed solar panels like sort of like a garage roofing, like an underpass for the entire parking lot of their high school, so they could run most of the electricity on their high school off of solar energy. So they stopped making such a big like dent in the like energy in California. Like the kids did this.
Yeah.
They crowdfunded for a year to be able to come up with it, and then they hired the guy, and the guy came and he built it. And this was kids that did this because they saw a waste of space and a waste of energy, and how can we eliminate both of this? So it's like, this is my life. I get to cruise around and just hang out with these amazing kids all day long. But it's all because I had a little bit of a push of confidence, and I spoke about my story, and I shared my life, and it opened up so many doors, which is sort of the message I push to kids, is like the whole find your shovel thing is like, find the thing that you love. Mine was music. It could be anything, and it could be several things, but my example I always give is mine was music. And I needed to start sharing myself in that music instead of just making music to be cool or popular, because that wasn't working. And and by opening up myself, it's opened up so many doors in my life. It's insane. So I always just say that, doing positive things like that will open up positive doors for you.
I like that, man. I couldn't agree more. I was actually going to ask, there's this popular video online, the Harbor interview you did, where you kind of give like the very basic groundwork of your personal story and kind of like the shovel
Right.
idea. I was curious, what age were you when you learned your story of like, your earliest years of being how you kind of came to have the family that you have?
I've always known that I was adopted. My mother had always made that clear with me. Um, she never hid anything from me with that. So from a very early age, I knew the story that I tell. I knew that story for a very long time, which I guess is the reason why I never thought it was that odd. I never thought that it was
Yeah.
outlandish or anything, because I've known the story since I was a child. You know what I mean? Um, and the rest of the events that unfolded in my life, are as ridiculous as the original story. And once again, I never really thought about it. Never really thought that I wasn't the average, person ever, um, because my life started on such a weird and crazy, note that I always just kind of thought this is what it is. This is what living is. And when I was dealing with my depression, I realized, I was like, oh man, this is not what living is. This is not like what is good. But I've always known about the kind of craziness that was my birth and my first few months of my life. And a lot of most of my friends know that story. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Of being born in a drawer and all that other stuff. So, it didn't hit me that all of my stories collectively were unique until 2 years ago. I didn't really even understand it. So, but yeah, it was always something that my mother's wonderful. She's the most. I mean, I feel like everyone says it about their mother, but my mother is the most wonderful human on the planet. And she's never kept anything from me. She's always been on the up and up and always honest about every little thing that we've ever done. So.
No, I mean, no, I respect that. I was just curious because if you had been told later, it would have kind of made sense. Where it was like, oh, it would probably come as a shock, but it makes sense how you said it. Like it was always familiar to you, so it never seemed unusual.
Right. Totally.
So, what was it? Can you like pinpoint a specific moment in time that is kind of this change in Davey that happens where you get this new outlook and you kind of start down this different path? Was there one incident or was it a culmination of things? Like what is this pinpoint that happens?
I think I met a couple kids that and I tell these stories when I'm go to schools, and I kind of amalgamate like a few kids into like one scenario.
Yes.
But I met a few kids that you really hit me. I got a note from a girl once that she had said that uh, she grew up without a father, and always blamed herself for that. And in middle school, she got ignored by kids. In high school, she got made fun of because of her weight, and people called her ugly and all this other stuff. And she was the kid in high school that put her headphones in and walked around because that was her only escape. And she bought the Few and Far Between, and she listened to that song, The Weekly Slap in the Face, which is just, I wrote about growing up without a father, and how, without a family, and how, I'm not going to let the mistakes of, my birth family or my father determine what I do with my life. You know what I mean? And I wrote like one personal song one time, and she wrote me a note, and in that note it said, explain her whole life, and then explain that she listened to Weekly Slap in the Face, and that, she was a cutter and she didn't feel like cutting herself because there was someone out there that she looked up to that went through the exact same thing that she did, and I'm not dead, I'm alive. In that note, she just said, "Thank you for sharing your story." And then over time, I met her again, and we talked, and I didn't so much counsel her as I just was like, "I'm here for you," like all I can offer you is the fact that I went through it. I shared a little bit more about that story, about my dad and about my family, and um, over time I watched that girl blossom, and she's like doing hair and makeup for a living and just absolutely killing it. And, she always says she attributes it to me sharing my story in that song, same thing goes. There's another kid that I met that, he had nothing. He had no one. His family was gone because of drugs. His girlfriend and friends are gone because of drugs. He got sober and they pushed him away, and he tried to end up ending his own life. And when he got out of the hospital, he picked up a Vanna record, and basically was like the few and far between, and basically was like every song on it there was anything personal he related to. And he saved up like $35 to get a VIP ticket to come see us. He was like a homeless kid, straight like homeless, had no one, had nothing, saved up money that he begged for to come see our band play. And then he pulled me aside after the show and shared his whole story with me, and then said, "Thank you for sharing your story, but I want to live now. I know that someone else has done it. Someone else is alive. That's gone through what I've gone through," because his story is wild, and he looked at it as my story being, very similar to his, which it was. But then he looked at me and said, "Now what do I do with my life? I want to live, but I'm homeless. I have nothing. I have no friends. I have, whatever. But now what do I do with my life?" And I kind of shared some, another personal thing with him, that like I hated my name. I hated everything about Davey Muise. I hated that name. I hated everything about that guy. That guy is an orphan. That guy is a fatherless child. That guy's, a guy who gave up his dream. That guy's a punk who thought he was better than everybody else. I hate that name. And then, I said, "I bet you hate your name because it's your parents' name. It's everything that you hate about your family and everything about you hate about your past." And he agreed with me and said he did. And I just said, "Well, right now, like me and you, we're going to make a pact." Like, and I see him all the time still today. And I was like, "You're going to make a pact because when we die, what's going to be on our tombstones?" And he was like, "Well, our names." And I was like, "Right. So like, we need to make our names something that we're proud of, And you hear, you always hear stories like leave your legacy, you know what I mean? But one-on-one with me and that kid, I was like, honestly, man, I hate my name and you hate your name. So today, like together, let's work on changing that for the rest of our lives, working on having your name be something that's respected and my name be something that's respected, And I was on the Few and Far Between record cycle. I was on our headliner, and I met this kid, and these kids kind of changed my lives. And it was just like, man, my story that I shared, which is only a fraction of this messed up stuff that's happened in my life. There's these kids coming up to me saying, and I want everyone to be clear, it's not me. I don't think I'm special. I just think that I'm a human that shared a story, and other humans heard it, and that gave them a little bit of inspiration to be like, well, I look up to this guy. I like this guy's music and this guy's band. Turns out he was a messed up kid just like me, but he made it. So that gives me hope to maybe I can make it, And then I get to sit down and talk with these kids about how I made it and what I did, which is no secret formula. I just had to change myself. And I'm changing every day more and more. And meeting all these kids, I was like, man, I got to stop. I can talk the talk all I want, but I got to walk the walk, I got to stop, with thinking I'm better than anybody. I got to stop, making this about me. I got to start making this about everybody else. So I decided to share everything I could in, 11 tracks on Void. And now on this new record, it's the same thing. I've shared more and more about myself and getting to schools. And I when I met these kids, I kept on thinking, how can I reach more kids? How can I do it? And I started thinking about maybe doing club tours of doing storyteller style stuff at club tours. And I'm like, man, how am I going to pull this off? I have nothing to go off of. And then just the whole thing fell into place with with telling my story at schools. And that's sort of something that's like, I haven't quite brought the two worlds together completely, but I'm working on it every day to bring them together. And since I started doing this, like I've said, my life has just gotten so infinitely better. And so that's why I want to continue to push myself and continue to push the boundaries of what I can share with people and where I can share it. You know what I mean? I've been to countless schools over the past 2 years, and it's not going to stop. You know what I mean? I have a full schedule of doing that. And then when I'm not doing that, and I'm going to be touring in the band and sharing my story with kids via music. And then I just started doing the Think Entertainment Institute, where I'm going to start giving like lessons on how to start a band and writing lessons, and I can share more of myself through that. I'm going to start doing club tours where hopefully my guitar player Joel comes out with me and we do sort of like acoustic Vanna songs, and I tell the stories behind them, and I do like a whole like, storytellers, Henry Rollins ranting of whatever a night in clubs, so that kids that aren't in high school anymore can come see it in like a nightclub, like a show, you know what I mean? So I'm working on just literally like just sharing every aspect of my life that I can with kids. The kids have always been my passion. I've always worked with them, and it's no surprise to my mom or anyone else in my family that knows me that I'm doing this, because you've always been working with kids, and now it makes sense. Now that you're older, that you can work with older kids, and so it's always been a passion in my life, and I'm really glad that I've gotten the chance to try to chase that dream down.
Well, I think that's a great dream, man, and I very much respect you recognizing the position you're in and how you can use it to be a positive influence over other people.
Yeah.
I don't think enough people take that responsibility serious. Like, I don't think enough people embrace that responsibility or recognize it, that they,
right.
The power of influence that
I
they
think
have.
Right, and there's a ton of influence there, and I feel like there's not a lot of people want it. You know what I mean? They get into these positions. I guess I can speak for the band world. There's a lot of band guys that get into these positions, and they're just messed up kids with the microphone. You know what I mean? And a lot of times they aren't ready for it, or they don't want the responsibility of being a role model. But you are in one way or another, and that's not to knock anyone that does what I do in the band world. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that use their influence, a lot of singers and bands that are using their influence in the best way. And sometimes the best way, the only way they can, is just write it all down. They just write it all down. They scream into a microphone, and sometimes that's all they can do. That's the best they can do, because that's their passion and they're putting it down. And I always encourage these guys, man, when I go to schools and I see all these other bands I'm friends with and kids wearing these T-shirts, I'm like, you guys are making a difference. Whether you know it or not, whether you think you want to do more or not, you're doing a lot. Just by being in a band, just by giving these kids a place where they can go to sing the songs, be free, and just feel it for one night, you're doing a lot in their lives. You know what I mean? I don't consider what I do better than what anyone does. For me, it's just another way of influencing more kids. It's a way of, because my band's a very specific band. You know what I mean? Like, there's kids that I speak at their schools that are like, oh, you're inspirational, and they follow me and everything, but they're not into the band necessarily. You know what I mean? They're not into that style of music, but they recognize the passion, and I always try to encourage these band dudes, like, you're doing great. Like, what you're doing for these kids just by making music, it's amazing. You're giving these kids hope just by making music. So, and I always encourage these guys and my friends, my peers, to share more about themselves. Share as much as you can about yourself. Don't write the concept art piece record. Write the record that is personal to you. You know what I mean? Because that's what kids care about.
Well, we're running out of time, but I did want to ask you about one thing. We talk so much about the new Davey and how much you've changed as a person. Do you ever miss the Secret Destroyer days? Because I still think the end of all living things is a solid record.
Thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate that. That record was very important to me. If you heard it, you can. It's Old Davey talking about how much Old Davey sucks, but Old Davey was still Old Davey at the time. It was me talking about how much I suck, but not knowing what to do about it. It's so funny. Secret Davey comes out every once in a while. He'll come out because I always try to let people know that, like, just because I have a smile on my face, don't confuse that for weakness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because I'm, don't confuse my happiness for me being a weak person now. I always say, I actually wrote a song about on the new record. It's, uh, I'm not smiling because I'm weak. I'm smiling because I literally have something in my life that I would kill for. I'd kill to keep it in my life. So Secret Davey, Old Davey comes out every once in a while when, a guy is rude to a female friend of mine at a bar, or, you know what I mean? Like, in the times that I'm like, all right, man, like, I know you think I'm a really nice, like, kind of wuss, but like, I really wouldn't go down that road. Like, you know what I mean? It's the whole thing of like, it's not worth it, Yeah. Other than that, I've said goodbye to that Davey. For better. I met my wife right. I met her on the last Seeker tour, in Canada. And, I always say, my wife would never stand for Seeker Davey. Never. She met Seeker Davey, but Seeker Davey quickly started a change in his life, and for the better. And my wife would have never tolerated Seeker Davey. No, there's no way.
I like that.
But but I do jam that record often. It brings me back to a time where I was really starting to. I started to let music speak for me. And I learned how to tour in that band, and I made a lot of friends that I'll have forever in that band. I mean, that band. I mean, like, I still tour with my friends that I met 10 years ago. You know what I mean? I just did that tour we just did up in Canada with that band, Like Pacific. The drummer of that band toured with his old band, toured with Seeker like 10 years ago, like forever ago, like, and we're still friends. You know what I mean? Like, I made a lot of connections through that band that I still have to this day. I'll never forget, everything that band and everyone in that band, what we did for each other. It was a magical band. I always say it was one of those bands. It was like it's like a terrible relationship where all you do is yell at each other and you hate each other. But man, the sex is great. You know what I mean? Like, performing with Seeker and playing live with Seeker was something that was unlike anything that's ever happened in my life before and ever again. It's got a very special place in my heart. Luckily, that heart is a lot bigger now, so I have room to put other things in there. But yeah, so that's so funny that you'd said that. But yeah, thank you for saying that about that record. It's unfortunate that record never got to get finished. It's kind of like an unfinished whatever, kind of like the band was. So that's why we decided to put it up online for everyone to take it if they wanted it.
And people can still get it. It's on Bandcamp.
I got it through Bandcamp. I literally got like 2 emails in a day from Bandcamp. Was like, someone just bought the End of All Living Things. Like, what? Really? Like, now? I actually didn't. I wiped my computer clean, so I lost everything. So I actually bought it recently too. I just purchased it off the Bandcamp. So yeah.
Well, no, I like that you still appreciate that record. I feel like there's bits of how you wrote on that record that show up in those early Vanna records, kind of before you pivot. There's definitely that same kind of imagery of, they're just some of the ideas follow through.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that record sort of like, we got to work with Richard Marr in that record, which he's like a super big punk, producer. He's done, I mean, literally any huge punk band you can think of, he's done them. And he was right in Austin. So we recorded that whole record in Austin with Richard, and Richard is just like he's a great producer. He was someone that I learned a lot from in capturing emotion. He really taught me how to capture emotion. So yeah, I mean, that record is really, it's still near and dear to my heart. Whether I'm friends with the people in the band, or I look back at the experiences and love it or hate it, it doesn't really matter. The record is there. And that's what's cool about music, is it's a time stamp in your life. Even if records that you didn't make, you didn't create, you just listen to, there are always time stamps in your life that you're like, man, remember when this record came out, I was here doing this with this person. So it serves as a really cool reminder, and it also serves as like kind of where I got my start. So I still have a Seeker T-shirt somewhere in my dresser. So I don't even really fit me anymore, but I look at it every once in a while and I like to remember. So.
Exactly. Well, that's great, man. Well, let's recap. So, Vanna album. Are you guys done recording now?
Yeah, I'm
All right.
home. I just came home.
It's wrapped.
It is almost officially wrapped. Joel, our vocalist, is finishing up the last 2 songs today. Our singer. Yes. So yeah, but all intents and purposes, Vanna record wraps.
All right. You have the art done already?
It is.
You got the idea?
It's in process.
Yeah.
We've been going over this artwork for like 3 months already. So artwork is in process. Moving slowly to the label.
So that'll be late spring, probably. Pure Noise.
It is going to be summertime. Pure
Summertime.
Noise. We're going to wait a little bit long. We're going to wait a little bit longer. We're going to make everyone a little bit more antsy and a little bit more agitated. We'll wait till the summer to release it.
Okay. Well, we'll probably hear something by late spring.
You'll hear something. Yes, you'll start hearing things sooner than that. But yeah, we got a big year next year.
Yeah, I bet, man. Well, I'm excited to see what you do, and I hope I can catch one of these speaking appearances at one point, even if I gotta act like I'm a teenager again. I want to see it in action.
I'm speaking in Duxbury next week, and then Maine the week after that.
All right. Well, then maybe I can make one of those things happen. I think it's a great thing that you're doing. I want to see it happen, and I wish you the best of luck going into the future, man. I hope you have a great end of 2015, dude. It seems like it's been a good year for you. So.
It has, man. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
No problem, man. Have a great day.
All right, man.
All right, peace.